Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 356. So the Department of Justice wrapped up their internal investigation into whether or not Mr. Acosta or other lawyers were out of line or were involved in any wrongdoing when it came to the first prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. And I know this is going to shock all of you, but the incredible, thorough Office of the Inspector General found that Acosta really didn't do anything wrong. He just showed poor judgment. Meanwhile, I'm over here like, okay, well, Acosta showed poor judgment. No doubt about it, the King Koopa-looking MF should have been fired, should face all the scorn in the world. But what about his bosses? The whole entire system failed. The whole entire Department of Justice failed. Do you really think that Acosta was in on this by himself? Come on, guys. There's no way in hell Acosta made this decision without people at the Department of Justice all over him about it, pushing him one way or the other, or okaying his decisions. He wasn't the Attorney General of the United States of America. He was just one of many lawyers for the government, prosecutors for the government. He wasn't the be-all, end-all. He wasn't the big boss man. He wasn't the head honcho. He should have been fired. He should have never had a cabinet position, but it should die right there on the vine with him. It shouldn't go all the way up to his superiors. Who was his direct boss? And then that guy's direct boss. And then that guy's direct boss. All the way up to Mukasey. Buck stops with you. If you're in that position, all the good and the bad, the buck stops with you. Do these people really think we're not going to hold them responsible for what goes on? Now, criminally, I mean, obviously, the criminal justice system has absolutely failed everybody. It's a joke. There's a two-tier justice system, and you or I would have never had this sort of consideration. But with Jeffrey Epstein having so much money and so much sway, and Acosta himself saying it, belonging to intelligence, well, it's a different result for people like that. And you and I should just shut up and get in line and go hate our neighbor instead of focusing our rage where it truly belongs. And that's these assholes behind the scenes using their fall guys. Yeah, sure, like I said, it's great to have Acosta off of the game board, right? He's a do-nothing, worthless son of a bitch, no doubt about it. A spineless, worthless son of a bitch. Zero doubt about it. But his bosses need to be scorned just as much, and they need to have the spotlight turned on them. Every last person that put their signature to that prosecution agreement, to the kicking it back down to the state, every single person who put their signature on it should have to answer really hard, really tough questions. But nobody ever has to answer any questions, do they? And while this all sounds like doom and gloom, it was expected. Did anyone ever really expect the Department of Justice to admonish themselves? Does anybody ever expect any of these internal investigations to ever turn anything up? Why do you think they all initiate them? They don't want a real, transparent investigation, so they investigate themselves. Oh, we'll have the Inspector General do it. Oh, yeah, okay. That dude's as toothless as a 135-year-old man would be. It's an absolute joke. There is no oversight. There is nobody who stands there and says, all right, buck stops with me. It's all about the finger pointing and the blaming and all the other nonsense. Well, that's not good enough anymore. It's time for all of these people who were involved to take their share of the responsibility. Our article today is from the Daily Mail. Headline: Outrage as DOJ clears Alex Acosta and his team of prosecutors of wrongdoing and say they just exercised poor judgment by giving Jeffrey Epstein a sweetheart deal in 2008 for soliciting child prostitution. Now again, I have zero faith in the Justice Department, especially led by this bumbling fool, this buffoon, this CIA retread, Bill Barr. Zero chance that they would ever be transparent. Zero chance that they would ever do the right thing. And zero chance that they would swing the hammer at one of their own. Are you kidding? That's somebody in the club. They know the handshake. Acosta has the handshake down, and they're all friends, and they're all tipping their nightcap cups of whiskey or whatever it is they're drinking after their golf tournaments. You're not invited to that shit. Are you kidding me? You call the cops, you or I show up. But the good old boys, on the other hand, what, you think they're going to hold each other responsible? A scumbag like Bill Barr, who was involved in the war criminal George Bush's administration, he's the guy that we're relying on here. He's the man that's going to come in on his white horse and save the day? Zero chance that's going to happen. And anybody who's relying on Bill Barr to do anything productive is wasting their time. The Department of Justice has been an absolute dumpster fire since, at the very least, 1965. And it hasn't gotten any better. That's because we never hold them accountable. Nobody is ever held accountable for anything that happens. Was anybody held accountable for the massive failure of 9/11? No, we had the same players that were on that stage engaging in more nonsense on the stages recently. The Arab Spring, etc., etc. And these people just continue to go on with their lives like they haven't been miserable failures at every single turn. What exactly have any of these people done to make our lives better, mine or yours? Nothing. This article was authored by Jennifer Smith. The Department of Justice has cleared Alex Acosta, a.k.a. King Koopa, and his team of prosecutors of misconduct, but says they showed poor judgment with the sweetheart deal they gave Jeffrey Epstein in 2008. In 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting a minor for prostitution after being investigated in Palm Beach for sexually trafficking multiple girls. As part of his deal, he spent a year in prison, but he was allowed to go to his office every day and work. Wrong, not prison. He was in a stockade at a jailhouse. He only had to sleep there. The door wasn't even locked. He had full access to whatever he wanted, was able to run the roost like usual. But nah, nothing goofy went on here. Nothing silly went on here. Nothing sinister went on here. It was just poor judgment. That's what they would have us believe. The same man who said, "Oh, well, I saw the videos, Bill Barr. You can believe me about Jeffrey Epstein." Yeah, okay, sure, buddy. If you were to tell me that the sky was going to be blue tomorrow, I'd tell you you're a liar, Mr. Barr. The deal also protected 3 co-conspirators from prosecution in Palm Beach, and it was kept secret from his survivors for a year. Now, I'm going to touch on that in a minute when we get to the end of this article, because as doomy and gloomy as this sounds, it was to be expected. And really, this does not impact things moving forward. Sure, it sucks that the Department of Justice is so limp-wristed and weak, but they're not the final say on the prosecution agreement, which thankfully is in somebody else's court, literally, and in the hands of 11 other people. It was widely criticized as a slap on the wrist for the pedophile who killed himself in jail awaiting trial for sex trafficking last summer, allegedly. The deal has been under investigation by the Office of Professional Responsibility for months, and on Thursday it said released its decision. Yeah, for months. That means it's been sitting on their desk for months while they were busy doing whatever it is they were doing. Worrying about phone calls to Ukraine. Such ridiculousness has occurred. So much waste of money, so much waste of time, and so much waste of resources. Not one single serious commission about Epstein has ever been convened. Yet you had people up there in front of Congress over steroids and baseball at one point. We need to get our priorities straight. And all of these incumbents that are in D.C., they need to start looking for other work. While OPR did not find that department attorneys engaged in professional misconduct, OPR concluded that the survivors were not treated with the forthrightness and sensitivity expected by the department. Oh yeah, because everybody expects the Department of Justice to be sensitive. That's exactly what we expect from them. Meanwhile, they're throwing poor people in jail at an alarming rate for possession of drugs. But Jeffrey Epstein and his friends, just a poor bit of judgment there, folks. There was nothing untowards here. Come on now. We're the Department of Justice. Do you really think we'd engage in any sort of backroom dealing? Meanwhile, we're all looking at them like they have 5 heads, thinking to ourselves, hell yeah, not only do we think that's what you're doing, we know that's what you're doing. OPR also concluded that former U.S. Attorney Acosta, a.k.a. King Koopa, exercised poor judgment by deciding to resolve the federal investigation through the non-prosecution agreement, and when he failed to make certain that the state of Florida intended to and would notify survivors identified through federal investigations about the state plea hearing, the office said in a statement. So in other words, bitch-ass Acosta didn't do his job. This sorry sack of shit just said, forget it, who cares? I punted that one away. We'll let Kershaw and Florida take care of it. The dude should have never been invited to be part of the cabinet, should have been fired right after this case was brought to light, and at the same time, he is still not the only one responsible the way some people try and make him out to be. That might be okay for some people, but for me, I'm not going to let the other ones who are involved in this shit, his bosses, his superiors, the ones helping protect Epstein, why are we going to let them get off the hook when we have this little small bass on the line in Acosta? I don't know about you folks, but I'm out here to trophy fish. It released an executive summary of the report, but not the full report, citing privacy laws that protect the survivors involved as the reason why. Oh yeah, it's always something, right? It's always something with the government. It's national security. Oh, we're doing it because we want to protect people's rights. Meanwhile, they're busy stomping on everybody's rights every time you turn around. Such hollow bullshit from these people on a regular basis. It was immediately criticized by politicians who say this is another example of Epstein's victims being failed by the government. Letting a well-connected billionaire get away with child rape isn't poor judgment, it is a disgusting failure. Americans ought to be enraged. Jeffrey Epstein should be rotting behind bars today, but the Justice Department failed Epstein's survivors at every turn. Senator Ben Sasse, a Republican from Nebraska, fumed in his statement. And while I agree with his fuming and being all fired up, and I think that's great and awesome, but let's get some action behind that, yeah? How about we get some kind of laws out there, or at the very least some hearings, and pull all of these bastards up in front of the Senate or Congress and get them under oath? Not too much to ask. In fact, that's what I demand with my tax dollars, Senator Sasse. Can you make it happen? The report concluded that Acosta, who took responsibility in interviews for his decisions, had the authority as the U.S. attorney to resolve the case as he deemed necessary and appropriate, as long as his decision was not motivated or influenced by improper factors. Oh yeah, and that's the rub, right? That's them washing their hands of it, the Department of Justice. Oh, it was all Acosta. We had nothing to do with it. We give him that kind of ability, that lateral ability to make whatever decisions he wants. Yeah, right, bro. Zero chance that happened. Zero chance he didn't have some upper boss or station chief or whatever the hell you want to call it hawking him over his shoulder, wondering what was going on and reporting back up top. The office said its investigation had turned up no evidence that Acosta was swayed by impermissible considerations, such as Epstein's wealth, status, or associations, and in fact had resisted efforts by defense lawyers to return the case to the state for whatever outcome the state wanted. No, that's incorrect. All right, the state was calling the shots here. I don't even know what the OPR is talking about. The IG is an absolute joke. An absolute joke. And the Office for Professional Conduct is another joke. The report also did not find that a well-publicized 2007 breakfast meeting with one of Epstein's attorneys led to the non-prosecution agreement, which had been signed weeks earlier, or to any other significant decision that benefited Epstein. Oh, no, of course not. Everything was squeaky clean. We did this one great. Everything was well in hand, folks. No doubt about it. Records reviewed by the office show that prosecutors weighed concerns about witness credibility and the impact of a trial on victims, as well as Acosta's concerns about the Justice Department's proper role in prosecuting solicitation crimes. All of that is absolute BS, okay? Absolute BS. I mean, an absolute shit show. And the Inspector General should be embarrassed by this report. But guess what, folks? Remember I told you a little bit ago that at the end we'll talk about something that really matters? While this is obviously a black eye for the Department of Justice, it is not something that was unexpected. But guess what? The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals is going to rehear the non-prosecution agreement. And they're going to do it en banc. That means the whole entire court is going to hear it. The whole panel is going to sit in and they're going to make a ruling. And that is what is really important here. Because if they overturn the non-prosecution agreement, then the genie is certainly out of the bottle. There's no going back once that non-prosecution agreement is overturned. And I really think that there is a better than good shot that the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals does, in fact, overturn that non-prosecution agreement, rendering this whole entire BS save-face internal investigation that the Department of Justice put on moot anyway. When that ruling comes down, and if that ruling comes down favorably, and the non-prosecution agreement is torn up and scattered into the winds of history, then all of these people that have hidden behind it for all of these years are going to be forced out of their holes and into the light. And there's nothing that Bill Barr or this bitch-ass Department of Justice can do about it. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. All right, everybody. I'll catch you guys tomorrow morning.